Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, my beloved audience, especially my lecturers. Today it's our honor to be here as a group of four presenting our arguments toward certain questions that we have in our chapter 2, which is about national differences in political economics. Without further ado, allow me to go to the first questions. So I am the one who presents the first main arguments. My name is Jamon Thong. So there has been the belief stated that free market economics stimulate greater economic growth, whereas state-directed economics stifle the growth. So I strongly and personally believe that and support to these arguments, and I believe that country should follow a more free market economic rather than a state-directed economic due to three main ideas. First of all, it is because of self-regulating mechanism that a free market economic produce. Secondly, it creates a more competitive and profitable market in terms of free market economics. And last but not least, in term of state-directed economic, there has been a limitation of resources and incomes, which countries should prefer to use free market economic on the other hand. So before I move on to elaborate on my first arguments, allow me to provide the first definition of free market economic. So when we talk about free market economic or a free enterprise economic, it is a type of economic system in which productions and the distributions of its goods and services placed through the free market mechanism, which is guided by demand and supply. So when we talk about the free market economic, of course, we mean a self-regulating market, a market that regulates themselves itself. When we talk about the state-directed economic, we refer to a type of economics system that a state or business owner have the right, the means to their productions, but some particular economic activity is controlled by the government agency. So, moving on to the first main arguments, we believe it creates a more self-regulating mechanism which promote faster economic growth because of the demand and supply system. Of course, in the market, the productions is not produced by someone else. It is produced by the market itself, the demand and supply. For example, in the market, when there is a demand increase or higher than the supply, of course, the price of the commodity good will increase. When, on the other hand, if the supplier produce more good than the need of the consumer, the price of its good will go down. This represents the system of demand and supply that self-regulates itself in the free market economy. It also provides an adjustment in time toward the economy of country to adopt and change itself to fit within the new trend. Secondly, it is more competitive and profitable markets when we apply free market economics. First of all, before I go on, one reason that most business people are looking for is that they are here to do business. They want to keep up with the competitor and make money. And by doing so, they have to produce their goods, purchase their goods, and sell it into the markets. With this commitment, there will be an increase of money flow in the market, which generate economic growth faster than the state-directed economics. Also, it promotes ownership. So ownership is provided as an incentive. In free market economic business, and business or an investor are allowed to own property and other assets which allow them to, within this right, it provide them the power, the powerful incentive to work on and invest more into their business, just in the purpose of accumulating or getting the additional fund or wealth. By working hard, producing new things and creative, they can also encourage a new development for more inflow, which I explained that whenever they try to invent new things, new productions, it will lead to a more development in the economics. Last but not least, in a stated directed economics, the resource and incomes are limited, which is not really a good idea to put into practice. Well, it also limits the rights of ownership as well. Private investors are not allowed to own any substantial additional assets or property, which on the other hand, it put them or demotivated them. So business tend to be less competitive in terms of competitions and as well as less efficient. So moreover, it also promotes a lack incentive as well. Whenever we talk about a lack of incentive, we refer to the main concept and objective of the stated direct economic system. Its main goal is to allow everyone to work for the good of the society. So while this theory seems to be a noble idea, but it's actually not. A system that asks everyone to work for the good of the society and not allow them to gain or improve, develop their individual property and wealth is not really a good incentive for every business people to invest into a country. So all in all, because of these three main reasons, we believe that free market economics stimulate the economics grow faster than the state-directed economics does. So this is the end of my part. Next, I would like to give the floor to the next presenter. Thank you.
Good evening, Professor and everyone. My name is Ratana Gupta, and today I am going to talk about the relationship between corruption in a country and economic growth. As we know that economic evidence proves that high level of corruption negatively affect on the economic development. As in many countries, corruption is not a new phenomenon anymore, and this leads to great poverty, bad taxation, but international investment and affect the entire society. In this presentation, I will prove that corruption is really bad for economic growth and the reason why it affects the economic rates according to my research and study. First of all, corruption undermines government income and limits government investment, which means that there are a fragile pressure between government who play a role as a tax collector and citizen as taxpayer. Private companies tend to avoiding paying tax and not register to tax authority when they feel that there is an opportunity for them to the future payoff, since there is a change in frameworks and better workforce. Secondly, corruption seems to divert the productive activity to unproductive activity. For example, people will choose to collect the job that is able for them to collect bribes rather than the job that has higher productivity. And another major problem for corruption is that it is unstable distribution of wealth. First example to support this reason is that it is a huge difference between small and big companies. Small companies have to confront unfairness and pressure by the lack organizations which link to or associate to the government authorities. case to support this is that it is imbalanced incomes that is bad for economic development. For example, we can say that higher income reduce the economic growth rates, mean that it's change in capital GDP. And fourth reason is that corruption is bad for foreign investor and international trade, which means that our foreign investor who will seek for fair or competitive business conditions, they won't put their resources in a country which has the rule and regulation that is not strong enough, which they believe that it's occurred in the operational inefficient aspects. And last point, which means the last reason for that leads by corruption is that it's creation of crime, which means the existent form of mafia and criminal groups that use their own money, the power of the money to include in legal authority. And sooner or later, the country, the government will overwhelm and lose their power. This is a really bad impact that will affect the economic growth in the future in that country. So, as we know that corruption has so many disadvantages, I suggest that the government should strengthen the rules and individuals should conduct their work with ethics by empowering educational systems. And thank you. I would like to give the next floor to the next presenter.
Hello, my name is Kim Padalina. To start off, I'm just going to briefly talk about what determines a country's level of economic development according to the government's policy. So there are two measures, which are gross national income and the purchasing power parity. So the GNI means the sum of the GNI means the sum of the gross domestic product with the net income that receives from abroad or overseas. But the per capita income does not take into consideration the cost of living, which is why we have to introduce the purchasing power parity. So macroeconomics analysis relies on several different metrics in comparing economic productivity and standards of living between countries and across time. But one of the most popular metric is the purchasing power parity. Now again, PPP means an economic theory that compares between different countries' currency through the market of basket of goods approach, meaning to say that when there is a comparison between two countries' currencies at equilibrium. For example, the Cambodian currency, which is real, let's say we have 4,000 reals, so the money can buy you like 4 bottles of water, whereas the US dollars, $1 that equals to 4,000 reals can only buy you 1 bottle of water. So hence we can say that when the country's currency increases, it also determines the economic growth. However, the Nobel Prize winner Amartya Sen argues that the concept of economic development, should be broadened to include more factors that people experience through freedom and presence of basic health care and education, which later on was developed to the Human Development Index, considering the Quality of Life Index. This is based on 3 measures, which number 1 is the longevity of life. In other words, it's the life expectancy at birth. It refers to how long does a newly born baby is expected to live. For example, in Cambodia, the life expectancy is 68 to 69 years. This is according to research. Um, and moving on to number 2, being knowledgeable on education achievement. It means the level of education that is achieved by the people of the country on their average basis. So in other words, it's related to the literacy rate. It refers to what percentage of capability of the people that can actually understand, read, and write certain sentences on their daily basis. Because literacy rate is the symbol of the quality of the people. So if there is a low literacy rate, then it clearly shows that the country will not be considered to be speedily developed. Now let's jump right on to the last point, which is the standard of living. Now this should be influenced by the national and the per capita income of the people on average basis. And meaning that how sufficient of the average income of the people in regards to the human basic needs of life. For example, if there is sufficient average income of the people dealing with factors like consumption, output, health, education, environment, and security, and so on, then this can clearly prove that the country will be able to consider it as a developed country, or the country will be able to develop fast. Because this proves that we're free from poverty and all those such of things. Now, moving on to the last question is, do I think that San is correct that development is about more than just economic development? I mostly agree with this idea, but we should know that the human development index is, the human development index alone is not itself the single representative factor that can determine the levels of the country's economic growth. So I believe that it is such necessary that all of these determinants of indexes, including the gross national income, the purchasing power parity, and the human index development should all be combined together to determine a country's level of economic growth. That's all. I'd like to say thank you for spending your time listening to my presentation. Thank you.
Before I'm going through my presentations, my name is Kim Tong Polan. Let's start with our case study. There's a question that if we are a CEO of a company and we have $100 million, which country would we invest in between Korea and China? In my own opinion, if I am a CEO of the company, I have $100 million to make investment, I would choose to invest in China. There are many risks as a CEO to consider in terms of investment, but I will point out only 3 main risks, such as political risk, economic risk, and legal risk. Each risk has each claim. So first, let's start off with a political risk. These are all my supporting claim to political risk. First of all, China is a communist country with a free market economy. So this country has only one party, so we can consider that this country has no political issues. And for the investor that want to invest in China, will ensure that the investment will be stabilized. Unlike in Korea, there will be more than one
party. So sometimes it might be bring about the economic change due to the conflict, due to the political conflict. So next one, I also have a supporting claim to an economic risk. As we know that China is a large country and has populations with populations of 1.3 billion, and by these populations, so it's make a low cost of labor and a high labor force, which attract more investors to invest more in China. When the business start to growing up in China, the investor will get a benefit from the lower cost of labor and the massive supply of high labor force in China as well, and which make the company become more productive and more efficient. Another claim is that since China is a big country, so China has a favorable geography, which the land has a cheaper cost than in Korea. So now let's move on to legal risk, and I also have my supporting claim on this risk as well. China government is so supportive and open-handed for investors to invest more in China. Currently, China GDP is ranked number 2, and their biggest goal is to become the world's largest economy in the next 4 to 5 years. China already have a giant key investor like Apple, Nike, Adidas, Microsoft, and so on. And the influence of the giant key investor is make the investor think that there is a stable and legal system in China, so it may attract more investors to invest more in China. And as me as well, I also don't want to lose this opportunity to invest in China as well. So all through these advantages, we can say that the legal risk in China is low. Thank you for your participation. This is the end of my part. I will give a floor to the next presenter.
So here's coming to the end of our presentations. This is the reference that we have for our arguments today. And we thank you so much for your time listening to us. Thank you.